Hi guys, thanks again for tuning in today for another video, and today we're going to take a look at 5 things that you did not understand yet about Proverbs 26.
Arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is upon you.
The first thing that stands out as being difficult to understand is how the Hebrew here and the New King James reads in verse 4 and 5 of Proverbs 26. There seems to be a contradiction there. So what's happening? Verse 4, do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. So do not answer according to his folly or according to his foolishness. And then the next verse, answer him according to his folly. It seems like a contradiction. Let's take a look at what the Aramaic translation from the Peshitta renders into the English. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. But answer a fool according to your wisdom, lest he think in himself that he is wise. Wow, that clarifies it. And it might actually make sense now that we know that this is what the Aramaic says, and that's what the actual meaning is. Now, the New King James English might make a little bit more sense coming there from the Hebrew, that do not answer him according to his folly, but answer him in a way that is fitting to his folly, so that he won't be wise in his own eyes. Either way, the Aramaic, which is actually a translation from the Hebrew, actually it does bring a lot of clarification to what the original intention of the Hebrew was. I'll read this again. Chapter 26, verses 4 and 5. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. But answer a fool according to your wisdom, lest he think in himself that he is wise. So that's the first thing that can be clarified here in chapter 26. The second thing, verse 6. He who sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. Huh? That's the New King James. The Aramaic translation into the English, he who sends a message by the hands of a fool drinks iniquity from under his own feet. But there is a footnote there, and George Lambda, who is a native-born Aramaic speaker, explained that this is an idiom which means he damages his own cause. He who sends a message by the hand of a fool damages his own cause. Or as the idiom says, drinks iniquity from under his own feet. He who sends a message by the hand of a fool drinks iniquity from under his own feet, which is to say that he damages his own cause. So that clarifies things a lot. Let's take a look at verse 10. Now here we have an example in the New King James where God is written here in verse 10 italicized. That means that the word God doesn't actually appear in the Hebrew. And when I look over here at the Hebrew, I verify that the word God is not there in the Hebrew. So someone thought it was a great idea that the word God is implied in this verse. And so that's why they marked it with italics to show that it's an implied word. Now, did they make the right choice there? Well, that's the human choice. That's where human choices come into play. Verse 10, the great God who formed everything gives the fool his hire and the transgressor his wages. All right, both of the appearances of the word his are also italicized there. So someone thought that they should be inserted because of their implied. But verse 10, without those italicized words, would read, the great who formed everything gives the fool hire and the transgressor wages. Still difficult to understand. Verse 10, in the Aramaic, translated to the English, the body of a fool is greatly afflicted, and a drunkard thinks that he can cross a sea. Well, that's completely different. It echoes of other proverb verses which talk about how a drunkard wakes in the morning and doesn't know the wounds that he has, where they came from. He doesn't know what happens. It's basically a verse about the foolishness of drunkenness. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with how God formed everything and giving the fool his hire. It's just completely different. And to be honest, I just don't have the answer why the Aramaic there is so different from the Hebrew. I just don't know why. But it's a clear proverb. Anyway, it is true in verse 10, the body of a fool is greatly afflicted, and a drunkard thinks that he can cross a sea. All right, so moving on. The fourth and the fifth things that are difficult to understand in Proverbs 26. Let's take a look at verse 24. He who hates disguises it with his lips. That's the New King James. And the King James said, he who hates dissembleth with his lips. So you have to look up the word dissembly to understand that. It's to put differences in between people and to separate people. He who hates disguises it with his lips and lays up deceit within himself. Whereas the Aramaic reads, he who hates is known by his own speech. In his heart he entertains deceit. He who hates is known by his own speech. In his heart he entertains deceit. Well, that is very clear. Very clear. I like that. And the fifth thing that is different, that can be clarified from the Aramaic, is verse 28. Whereas the New King James from the Hebrew, a lying tongue hates crushed by it, and a flattering mouth works ruin. And to fill in the italicized words there, a lying tongue hates those who are crushed by it, and a flattering mouth works ruin. 28 in the Aramaic reads, a lying tongue hates the truth, and a troublesome mouth stirs up a quarrel. A lying tongue hates the truth, and a troublesome mouth stirs up a quarrel. That's interesting. The New King James reads that the lying tongue hates the people who are destroyed by that lying tongue. But the Aramaic states that the lying tongue hates the truth. Both are true. A tongue that is telling lies both hates the truth. And in this case, I appreciate the King James rendering of that coming from the Hebrew, because it is also true that a lying tongue hates the people who are damaged by those lies. So in verse 28, I like the New King James as well as the Aramaic, but in these other four examples of the five, the Aramaic is much more clear. And this is coming from the Aramaic translation into the English from George Lamza, a native Aramaic speaker. And the link will be included down in the description if you'd like to pick up a copy of that. Thank you for watching, and thanks for paying attention, and thanks for reading and studying along with us.
Arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is upon you. Arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory